Because if you don't, you could end up losing more than money. It could cost you your character and your family's future. Remember, every dollar spent in an attempt to impress other people is a dollar not spent on saving for retirement or building a legacy that lasts. Making a generational impact starts with one person, one family, one community. And so the Gen 1 legacy is my attempt to help first-gen tech professionals like you get your financial house in order so you can live your legacy. Have you ever gone out of your way to impress someone after making a lot of money? Maybe it was right after landing your first six-figure job. Or maybe it was when your startup went public and transformed your seemingly worthless stock options into a life-changing windfall overnight. Now, if you have, in a way, it's like proving to the world that you finally made it, right? Well, these moments often remind me of stories about famous people who came from nothing, made a bunch of money, and then got themselves into trouble. Take Mike Tyson, for example. Now, Tyson is a heavyweight boxer and was one of the world's highest paying athletes during the peak of his career. But he ended up blowing his newfound wealth almost as quickly as he made it. In fact, during the height of his spending, he famously purchased over 100 cars, he bought several million-dollar homes, and he even bought a few Bengal tigers to go along with it all. And so you'll likely know where the story goes from here, right? Because despite having earned over $400 million at the height of his career, Tyson ended up losing nearly all of it and went bankrupt in 2003. You know, Tyson's situation is a tragic rags to riches story. That's because he had this desire to show the world that he finally made it, but in the end, he ended up nearly losing it all. Now, as a first-gen high earner, have you ever felt compelled to show the world that you've finally made it? Have you ever splurged on a brand new luxury car or bought a home that was at the top of your budget? Now, whatever your situation might be, it's crucial to remember that spending to keep up appearances can derail your plans to leave a legacy for your family and hinder your ability to save for the long term. That's why as your windfalls come in, it's essential to clarify your values, set your priorities straight, and develop a touchstone to help you keep track of your financial goals. Because if you don't, your retirement plans might fall short and you might not have much to show for it after all. Now, thinking about Mike Tyson's financial fall from grace, I see echoes of his experiences in my own background as a first-generation Romanian American. You see, my parents immigrated to the States with little more than hope shortly before I was born. But with persistence, they gradually built up a modest amount of wealth through their own sheer determination. However, what became clear to me growing up watching them managing their money, and what resonates with Tyson's story as well, is the added layer of complexity that comes with managing newfound wealth. That's because in the Romanian community where I grew up, there was this unspoken rule that financial success had to be visible. You see, it wasn't just about money, it was about showing the world that you had finally made it, right? And so what did this look like? Well, it meant driving the right car, it meant living in a well-decorated home, and it meant dressing in a manner that screamed success. And you know, in many ways, this behavior wasn't just a personal choice, it was a cultural expectation that mirrored the societal pressures that you or I often face. But you know, the tendency to spend extravagantly to signal success isn't limited to one community. Indeed, from stories ranging from the Great Gatsby to the reckless spending that we've heard of from Gold Rush 49ers back in the day, this pattern of behavior spans cultures and eras. In fact, it's a phenomenon that economists call status consumption, and it's a term popularized by Thorstein Veblen in his seminal work, The Theory of the Leisure Class. Now, Veblen describes how luxury goods and services are not just simple material purchases, but instead they're public symbols of economic power. You see, status consumption often leads to spending that goes beyond your or my means and is a way to visibly signal success to the community around us. Now, this signaling might manifest itself in the purchases of luxury items like high-end vehicles or clothes and accessories to many other forms of conspicuous spendings we might engage in. And so you ask, why would we engage in this kind of behavior? Well, research suggests that this behavior is typically driven by our own internal desire to publicly affirm our success and gain acceptance into the higher social circles. But you know, the trouble is that this kind of spending can jeopardize not only our current financial situation, but also our ability to sustain wealth long enough to secure a comfortable retirement and provide for our loved ones across generations. And so, going back to Tyson's experiences, the challenge becomes clear about how essential it is to balance the desire to show that you've made it with the discipline of sticking to your long-term goals. Now, I'll admit that Tyson's story is a bit of an extreme. I mean, the likelihood of you or me finding ourselves in a similar situation and making the same choices is very small, right? Well, maybe. You see, the degree of spending might be different, but the behavior is more common than you think. How so? Well, let me tell you the story of Dave and Beth. Now, like many of us, Dave and Beth were diligent about managing their finances when they first got together. You see, Beth was raised in a working class family and she learned the value of a dollar early on in life. In fact, Beth had this skill where she could stretch a dollar further than anyone she knew. Now, the thing going for both of them was that Dave wasn't a flashy spender either. And so early on in their marriage, they lived an otherwise simple, minimalistic lifestyle. Beth even drove the same car she had in high school, and she was adamant about not upgrading her car until Dave paid off his own car. So then from the outside, this couple was the picture of financial prudence. But then, wouldn't you know it, something changed. You see, Dave got a big promotion that moved their family across the country to Florida. And just like that, all of a sudden, they found themselves in an affluent, gated community in Orlando, far away from their humble beginnings. Now, with this new home came new neighbors who were highly educated, successful professionals, and entrepreneurs who live life on a grand scale. These are the kind of neighbors that drove the latest luxury cars, they were members of the local country club, and their kids all attended private school. And so, how did this affect Dave and Beth? Well, things started to change. And it all began with the small things. First, they decided to get a nicer car to replace the older one. Then they started treating their neighbors to upscale dinners here and there. And then one thing led to another, and their spending eventually spiraled out of control. And you see, for Dave and Beth, it wasn't about meeting their physiological needs. It was about the status consumption. In other words, the spending was fueled by a desire to fit in or to show their neighbors that they too had made it. That's because their spending was no longer driven by their own values, centered in being mindful of the resources available to them. And so with each purchase, they strayed further and further away from their true selves. And so how did they manage? Well, despite Dave's high income, the couple soon found themselves with over $100,000 in credit card debt, and they ended up tapping into their home's equity line of credit just to keep up. You see, what happened was what they'd owned on the outside was costing them everything on the inside. And eventually, they had no choice but to get help from a bankruptcy lawyer as well. Now, while Dave and Beth originally started their financial journey on the right foot, ultimately, they lost track of their long-term goals because they were so consumed by their near-term desire to show to the world that they finally made it. And so from this perspective, it's clear that without a strong foundation and a clear vision, anyone can fall into the trap of status consumption. So then what can you do to ensure that you don't fall into a similar fate? Well, the first step to safeguarding against the pitfalls of excessive spending is to firmly understand and define your core values. And so what do values have to do with money? Well, values ultimately reflect what matters most to you at a deep level. These are the principles that guide your behavior even when no one else is watching. So then by identifying your values, what you're doing is equipping yourself with a compass to guide your financial decisions, especially as your wealth grows over time. So then to begin this journey, ask yourself, do I know what my core values are and which ones can help guide me as I make savings and spending decisions? Set aside some quiet time to reflect on what truly matters to you. Think about those moments of life that have brought you the most joy and fulfillment, and consider the values at the core of those experiences. Then jot down your thoughts in a journal and focus on those principles that have guided your actions when no one else was watching. And if you're still not sure how to approach this situation, then try completing a values assessment or reviewing comprehensive resources like James Clear's core value list, which I've discussed in previous posts and podcasts that are available at legacygen1.com. And so once you have a clear understanding of your values, you can then use them as a compass to evaluate your current spending so you can develop your long-term savings goals. All right, now with your core values defined, the next step here is to use those values to crystallize your long-term financial goals. Now, anyone can set long-term goals, but the difference here is that you're digging deep and you're considering what's important to your life and then looking into the future to see what your life might look like as a result of the financial choices that you're making today. Because here's the thing, without a clear vision for what your money's for, it's all too easy to let the windfalls be squandered on fleeting pleasures rather than having them contribute to what matters most in your life. So then take the time to ask yourself, how do I want to put my money to work in a way that honors what's essential to me? Then start by reflecting on your core values and how they can shape your financial future. Here, what you'll want to do is take some time to visualize what a fulfilling and meaningful life might look like to you over the long term. Does this mean ensuring that you have enough money set aside for a meaningful retirement? Or is it about having enough money saved to provide for 2 or 3 generations down the road? Either way, write down your specific long-term goals that align with your values and consider how each goal will contribute to what matters most to you. Finally, once you have your values and your goals defined, it's time to bring them together to form your touchstone. Now, a touchstone is a concrete representation of your financial philosophy and your goals. It's not just a to-do list, but it's a blueprint for your future life decisions. Now, this touchstone ensures that every financial choice you make supports your ultimate life goals goals, and helps you resist the pressure of status spending. So then the purpose of a touchstone is to help you stay grounded, especially when you're tempted to show the world that you made it. And it does this by prompting you to ask questions like, does this purchase support my values and help me achieve my long-term goals? Now, one of the most effective things that you can do is to use your financial plan as your touchstone. Here, what you'll want to do is begin by reviewing your financial plan on a regular basis to ensure that it accurately reflects your core values and your long-term goals. At the same time, you'll want to ensure that it's detailed and actionable and that it outlines specific steps and milestones for achieving what you set out to do. At the same time, you'll want to keep your financial plan easily accessible so that when you do face temptation to show the world that you finally made it, you can take a moment to revisit your plan and remind yourself of the bigger picture and your ultimate life goals. So then by consistently leaning on your financial plan during moments of temptation, you'll be better equipped to make decisions that align with what truly matters most to you and help you avoid the pitfalls of status spending. You know, when it comes down to it, this isn't just about managing your spending, it's about living a life that's aligned with what you truly believe in and value. So then from this perspective, avoiding status consumption involves reflecting on your values, setting a vision for your life, and utilizing your financial plan to remind yourself of what's on the line if you decide to use your money to show off instead of fulfilling your life goals. Because if you don't, you could end up losing more than money. It could cost you your character and your family's future. Remember, every dollar spent in an attempt to impress other people is a dollar not spent on saving for retirement or building a legacy that lasts. Ultimately, it's a missed opportunity to invest in what truly matters most to you and your loved ones. But with all that said, imagine a future where every financial decision you make is a step towards that ideal life that you've already envisioned. Imagine years from now being surrounded by the people you love, living a life rich with purpose and stability because you chose to invest wisely, spend thoughtfully, and prioritize what truly matters most to you. So then let your touchstone, let your financial plan guide your choices, big and small, no matter what's going on in your life. And remember that every decision you make is an opportunity to reinforce the life you're building today while taking you one step closer to becoming the master of your own financial independence journey. To learn more about today's topic, you can visit the episodes page at legacygen1.com. And if you can find one person in your life who would benefit from today's message, please share this episode with them. But until next time, I'm Peter Donisanu, wishing you and yours abundant health and prosperity.
The Gen 1 Legacy Podcast is brought to you by Franklin Madison Private Wealth. Franklin Madison Private Wealth is a registered investment advisor firm with its registration and principal place of business in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Registration of an investment advisor does not imply a certain level of skill or training. The information shared today is not intended to be personal, legal, investment, or tax advice, or solicitation to buy or sell any security or engage in a particular investment strategy. The commentary and forecasts are limited to the dissemination of and general information pertaining to Franklin Madison Private Wealth's investment advisory services and are based on economic and market conditions that are subject to change without notice. For additional information about Franklin Madison Private Wealth, including fees and services, please contact Franklin Madison Private Wealth or refer to the Investment Advisor Public Disclosures.